I'm so glad somebody reminded me of that because I was going to say something about it. But last night I watched Television One News. Now, I watched Television One News because, um, interestingly, of the weather events that were around the country yesterday, particularly in the South Island as it was, and because of the tragedy that had happened, obviously, in Wellington, and I wasn't sure of the circumstances of that particular tragedy. And I wanted to see the images so that I could sort of get some sort of context as to what was going on. And then obviously, yesterday there was that bizarre case where at Whangarei Public Hospital, what, a dozen? Almost 20 cars, 20 dozen destroyed, over 20 cars damaged by this extraordinary fire. So, I mean, there's a lot sort of happening that I wanted to see the images of. I then saw the image, I have to say, of the chap that died with a tree falling off, and I think it's a tragedy of its own, but I thought, what the hell were you doing walking in a fire in the middle of a gale in a, in the area that he was? But anyhow, there you go. So there I was watching the news last night. So I just wanted to exonerate myself from appearing as if I'm an habitual user of TV1 News because I'm not that much of an masochist, all right? So I'm not. It's just that sometimes you want to see the images
It's like you're trying
and
to explain why you're
in
in your dad's
context for
cookie
yourself.
jar or whiskey bottle or something like that.
Well, it was just, I just wanted to have a look, Josh. I just want to see what the contexts were and how bad it really was, particularly the fire at Kaikoura, which had closed State Highway 1. I think it's still closed now as I talk to you. And just you want to see the images that go with what you've heard of the news during the day. Well, God, I've watched that and I should have turned off the television at that stage or switched the channel or something, but I didn't. And so I watched TVNZ's news correspondent from the United States, or in the United States, called Logan Church. It's Logan Church, is it? The TVNZ correspondent. Have you come across him at all, Josh? Logan
Yeah, I've heard the
Church.
name, yeah.
All right. And Logan is a TVNZ journalist who has been appointed relatively recently, I think, to the US beat. And apparently it's meant to be quite prestigious. He's an overtly gay, woke bloke, can I say, with a beard and, well, frankly, a little overweight, but it doesn't matter. That's who he is. And the trouble with Logan is that he is overtly gay and he is woke and he inflects that particular part of his personality and politics into just about every report that emanates from the United States and therefore is telecast on TVNZ News. And he was talking last night about Judith Collins, the Defence Minister's visit to the Pentagon to talk, I guess, mutual defence arrangements, and it was a bit of a show and tell, I suppose, for best people getting on with each other. They are, after all, our defence ally. We're in Five Eyes. There'd be a whole series of things, particularly around possibly the procurement of military supplies and equipment too, that would be relevant to that particular discussion. But at the last moment, apparently, Logan Church, the TVNZ news correspondent, was excluded from covering or physically covering the meeting between the relatively lowly, I think he was the Deputy Secretary of War, I suppose it's relatively prominent, and New Zealand's Minister of Defence, and had to rely upon footage provided to him by the Pentagon of the two of them sitting down at a table and having a chat together. And he was, so, and then he starts his, I guess, report of the particular meeting and all the important things that were decided. We're spending millions, billions for God's sake on defence. And and also it's a new relationship, and I was waiting to hear all about that relationship. And then he decides to start the item by saying that he'd been excluded, but this isn't about me. I think those are almost the exact words, but this isn't about me. And then for the next 2 to 3 minutes of the particular item, it all being about him and about him being excluded from this meeting in the most incredible and dramatic of self-indulgent drivel, which made sure, I have to say, dear God, it made sure it was all about him. Like he'd been excluded from his favourite gay nightclub, for God's sake, and was now bitching to his friends about all the horror and humiliation of it all in that sort of flamboyant and overt way that, well, Logan Church would talk, wouldn't he? It was the most extraordinary. He flapped his arms around in this sort of broadcast complaint to the public of this country that he, the great Logan Church, with incredible insight and intelligence, had somehow not been allowed to attend this meeting. But it's not about me, he would constantly say, and then plunge off into a new series of rhetoric that clearly made sure it was about him and how dreadfully upset that he was. I was still waiting at the end of that particular item for some understanding of what had come out. There was finally a desultory piece where Judith Collins said something to the camera, and that I think lasted perhaps 10 seconds. Maybe it got to 15. But for the previous 2 minutes, our overtly gay woke correspondent from Television New Zealand rather proved every prejudice or every cliche that one might have about folks such as in deciding to ruminate with us and complain to us and bitch to us, the only probable word that we can use in this particular case, about how it wasn't all about him. It just was. Hands going everywhere. He looked like a bird that had just had its wings singed by flying too close to some sort of industrial burner. Ah, dear Lord. One day we'll get real journalists, but obviously not today. Not at Television New Zealand News. Anyhow, those are my thoughts today.